walking down the cobblestone sidewalk in Westchester, Pennsylvania with my best friend Yvette. She couldn't hide her blackness, and I didn't know why she needed to. My junior year of college, I decided to go on exchange. So after growing up in Berkeley, California my whole life, I decided to go as far away as I could, and I chose Pennsylvania. I chose a small provincial college town just outside of Philly, Westchester. I got off the plane and I melted into the Philadelphia humidity, hopped into a cab, and we drove through the beautiful green rolling hills on my way to Westchester, my new adventure. My second day in Westchester, I walked down the cobblestone sidewalk and I entered a hoagie shop. I ordered my first hoagie ever, a vegetarian. And the woman at the counter looked at me kind of strange, and we talked a little bit. She had never heard of vegetarian. And so after laughing and talking for a few minutes, I landed myself a job. The next day I started work and I met my new best friend, Yvette. And I don't know if you've had this feeling before, but when you meet somebody, you instantly connect, and that person's like family. And that's how Yvette was for me. My life would never be the same. She was wickedly smart, very talented, and had a huge heart. She had this quiet kind of grace about her that spoke volumes of growing up Black in a white conservative town. So this one day we went downtown, as we did, down the cobblestone sidewalk, and I was just, we needed to go to a diner because we had been partying the night before and had incredible hangovers. And I noticed as we were walking how different Westchester was from where I grew up, with the brick houses all lined up neatly, big American cars and driveways, and even bigger American flags waving their patriotism. And that was starkly different from growing up in my neighborhood, where the houses were all different in different colors and pretty funky, and little Japanese cars and peace signs that were painted on people's windows as you walked by. So we walked into the diner, and I made contact with the hostess, and immediately upon seeing both of us, she turned her back. And I was like, that's weird. So I looked at the diner, and there was only 3 tables taken. The rest of it was empty. And I continued to look at the hostess, and she continued to ignore us and pretend as if she didn't see us. And I was like, dang. So I looked at my friend Yvette, and I'm like, what's up with that? Clearly she sees us. Why isn't she seating us? Yvette just looked down and was quiet. I looked back up at the hostess, and I got it. She didn't want to seat us because my best friend was with me, and she's Black. I was pissed. I was like, what? So I walked up to her, and I said, we're going to take the table over there. And I just walked over before she could respond, and I motioned for Yvette to come over. And Yvette walked over with her head down and slid into the booth next to me. And I started complaining about the hostess. I mean, seriously? Yvette just came over and whispered, we don't do that here. We don't do that here. And I got it. In that moment, I got it. This is what Yvette grew up with her whole life, but not me. I had never had that happen before. So we ate our breakfast in silence, and then right before the check came, I went to the bathroom. And I walked into the bathroom, I opened up the stall door, and there was a sign over the toilet, a handwritten sign, and I thought, dang, somebody's written graffiti in the bathroom. It looked like a thick black Sharpie. And I read the sign, and I read the sign again, and I thought, oh my God. Basically, the sign said, hey, you, yeah, you, don't put your effing tampons down the toilet, N-word, signed the management. Holy shit. I just couldn't believe it. What? Hello? Who writes that? The management writes that? Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. It's 1985. We already had the civil rights movement. Things have changed, haven't they? We don't have segregation anymore. Things are different now, aren't they? Apparently not. I walked back to the table and I was shaken, just in total shock, disbelief, and anger. Yvette looked at me and she said, "You saw the sign?" And I nodded. She said, "Yeah, it's really beautiful here in Pennsylvania, and the people here are pretty fucked up. It's just the way it is." It's just the way it is? I mean, intellectually, I understood that racism and discrimination existed. My parents were bohemians. I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. I knew that. But it had never happened to me personally. Not until now. So we go outside after we paid the bill, and we decide to go back to Yvette's house. So we're walking back to her house, and as we're walking back to her house, we hear a car behind us, a really loud car, like it needs a new muffler. And the car starts to follow us, and we keep on walking, and it keeps on following us. And so we walk a little faster, and I'm getting really nervous. I'm looking at Yvette. She's nervous, and we both keep on walking faster, and the car keeps on following us. We go down the hill, over the train tracks, and the car is still there. And by that time, I'm just about ready to say, "Run, run, run!" But nothing's coming out of my mouth, and my feet just stop. And the car is about my arm's width away. And the guy looks at me, and he rolls down the window, and he is just angry with hatred. And he looks at me, and he goes, "Hey, you end-lover, go back to where you came from." And he speeds off. I'm like, what? And Yvette just grabbed my hand, and we raced down the road to the corner, round the corner, up the stairs to our house, and through the door. And we closed the door, and we were leaning against the door, shaking in terror. And for that moment, for the first time in my life, I felt like what it might be like to be her, to have so much fear and never know when that's going to happen, and how I had been completely unaware of my white privilege, of this safe bubble I had lived in. So several months later, I decided to go back home for spring break, and I invited Yvette to join me. And I was so excited to go back home. And she was so excited to leave. Yvette never went back to Pennsylvania again. And I could never go back to the world that I had lived in, of not being aware that racism existed, that it exists now, and that I had lived a life of white privilege without even knowing it. Not because I had done something or earned something, but just because of the color of my skin.